provision? To have your world turned upside down? I see a radiant young woman back there who just glows and shines with the glory of God. A world turned upside down, but continued to believe God, and the favor of the Lord has been with her. She has more income than she did even before. Happy, blessed. It's a miracle of God. It's amazing. It's amazing. People that have been told that your loved one is not going to make it, and they live on and on. Brother Gene is in heaven. He is celebrating in a mansion. He's living in the glory of God. But I've known that man for years. And he was told so many times, this is it. The man, he got to where it was just, he had a sense of humor anyway, but he just joked about his annual clean out of having to have all the catheterizations and all of the stuff, but so many heart procedures, so many things. And he lived year after year after year in serving God, glorifying God, giving God honor with his life. And then the time came to just move on to heaven. He had his reward. That's an amazing thing. And when he did, he just went to sleep. Just went to sleep. Janie's husband, Paul, a man of faith, a man that loved God, not a man that grew up and raised in word of faith and believing in healing power. And Janie and I worked on him when he got a diagnosis of terminal cancer. And Paul, he believed God, didn't he? Tremendous faith, loved God, believed in God with all of his heart. But that healing thing just wasn't quite there. And we tried. And then the time came and I just we knew it, and it's just like I can't get there, can't be there with that. And so I just believed God, and we knew, and it's just like, Lord, just receive your son home. And Paul said, I'm tired. I just want to go home. We had to accept that. That's his will. But they diagnosed him with a cancer that was going to cause tremendous pain and last a long time. And she'd been through that before. And no one should have to be through that. It was never God's will. And God, in his mercy, because he loved Paul and he loves Janie, when we said, Lord, just receive your servant home, receive your son, that within 2 weeks, just went to sleep. No pain. None of that suffering. None of that tragedy. I prayed and believed God for my father to be saved, to live for Jesus, for my mom to live her faith out in Jesus Christ. And less than 24 hours before he entered eternity, he gave his life to Jesus Christ. The amazing thing in a fight of faith is that I can tell you matter-of-factly that he died once, but I can say, because I know you know me, that it was more than once. But he had a whole team of the whole respiratory team, the whole nurses team, the nurse administrator for this hospital in St. Louis, the head of respiratory care, the doctor from respiratory care in there, all of the therapists, all these nurses and everyone else, and the ward doctor who said, well, that was his last hurrah, and was ready to pronounce him dead at that time. Okay, we're going to call it, and said that was his last hurrah. And when they got ready, I said, no, no, he cannot and will not be dead. And I'm the one that called their attention to it, because they had put a special mask to force air into him and breathing. And I saw he was already pale, but I saw him just go white, his fingers change, and his lips blew, and they pulled that off, and then they did some things, and then we're going to call it. And I said, no, we're going to pray. And I prayed in the Holy Spirit. I didn't care. And there were people in that. It was like 2 rows of them, so many of these people. And some of them were praying with me. I don't know if any of them were praying in tongues or not, but there were Christians that were praying, and I prayed, and I declared that he would live and not die. And then all of a sudden, just watching him as I prayed, he went and took a breath. Lived, was able to receive Jesus Christ, and then entered into eternity. He was diagnosed with a disease, terminal, more than one, but the lung one, that would be over a year and a half of just slowly suffocating to death in agony. And he didn't do that. And he entered eternity, and I'm going to see him. This is the fight of faith. Bad things can happen. Challenging things can come, and let me say, will happen. Jesus said we would have challenges in this life, but He gave us His Word. He gave us His promises that we could stand on and have victory. And that's the balance. If you take what we believe into la-la land and believe that nothing ever goes wrong, everything is sunshine and roses, you tiptoe through the tulips, life is like looking through rose-colored glasses, you are going to have a rude awakening, and you're going to come crashing down when the tragedy hits your life, the one that you just aren't prepared for and ready for. And I have seen it time and time again. And so that's why we're talking about being battle ready. Last week we talked about faith. The battle of faith. That's what we got to hang on to when these things happen. And so when it happens, that's when we're going to know. That's when God knows. That's when the devil knows. That's when the world knows. Did you or do you believe or not? See, we can say, oh, I believe, until somebody comes and puts a gun up to your head and says, deny Christ or die. And it happens in this world. And we can say conceptually all we want, oh, I would never deny the Lord. Folks, did you ever hear about a guy named Peter? Ever? I'm going to tell you something. That guy had some faith. Go to Matthew chapter 14. And on your way to Matthew chapter 14, let me do this. Let me stop at James chapter 1, verse 6 and 7. For those of you that have Bibles. Most of you have electronics, so go to James 1, 6 and 7. You got the paper ones. I remember when we used to do that. All right, put your finger there. Now turn over here and let's set the stage and do that. This is nice, convenient, and that's a blessing, even though that stinking screen blinked today. And I thought I had it fixed. It's better. All right, James 1, 6 and 7. And I'm just jumping right in where it talks about asking for wisdom. That's the context. If any of you lacks wisdom, ask of God. But James 1, beginning with verse 6, it says, but when you ask God, let him ask in faith. Remember we talked about you can't please God apart from faith. Got to have faith to please God. You got to have faith to be the conduit for the power of God to work through. Remember that? So you got to ask for what you're wanting, what you desire in faith. If you don't have faith, it's just words. It's not going to do any good. So you got to ask in faith, and again, backing up, remember, how do we get faith? We get faith by hearing and hearing the Word of God over and over again. So Romans 10:17 comes into play. Find the promise that deals with what you're praying about. Meditate on that, confess that word, and pray based upon that promise. Okay? That's how you can ask in faith. Lord, you said this, so I'm asking for you to do that. Well, if He said it, I can be in faith that it's going to happen. Do you know that I would almost venture to say the majority of believers in the body of Christ pray prayers like, well, if it's your will, God, and if you could just see fit, and they don't even believe what they're praying. They're like the Matthew 8 guy. Lord, if you would, you could heal me. I know you can heal me. I just don't know if you will heal me, if it's your will. If it be your will, you can heal. Jesus said, I will. Be whole. And He answered the question. God's will to heal. And that chapter goes on, Matthew 8, to show God's will regarding healing and how Jesus is the fulfillment of all the promises. And everyone was healed. Lord, if it's your will, if you'd heal me. Can you imagine if your kid coming to you, Dad, if it's your will, can you get this prescription for me? If it's your will, Dad, will you give me some supper? If it's your will, you could just see fit. If you got enough left in the pocket today. That's not faith, and that's not me being a good dad. I know we've talked about this, but I've got to nail it. We've got to get it home. So we got to ask in faith. And then here's what it says. Not with no doubting. Everybody say that out loud. With no doubting. So we ask in faith, again, with no doubting. See, faith and doubt are polar opposites. Unbelief is the opposite of faith. It's really faith in the negative. But faith is to have absolute trust and confidence in God, in His Word, in the promise that He's made to you. And so we ask in faith. With no doubt. There's no doubting. There's no room for doubting. And let it explain why. For he who doubts is like the wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. Any words of faith you pray, any words of faith you confess, any words of faith you declare are negated by the words of doubt, words of unbelief that you have, or the doubt and unbelief you have in your heart. There's no oomph to those words of faith. It's not faith. It's just faith-sounding words. And by all means, confess God's Word until faith gets big and you believe what you're saying. It comes alive inside of you. But if you go from this back and forth, I believe, thank you, Lord, for healing me. You pray in the church, God, heal me. Okay, I thank you that I'm healed. And then you go home and you feel symptoms, or you go to the doctor and they give you the next report. You say, well, I guess it was God's will. It didn't ever, I'm just going to be this way. It's going to be this way. I had people declaring stuff over me. I'd be in a wheelchair in crippling pain if I gave in to that. I had more people in my congregation believing for me to suffer. Not that they wanted me to suffer, but believed it's God's will for me to suffer. And when I declared that, it was like, Ray's going to be Ray. There weren't a lot. It's like, yeah, brother, I agree, I'm staying with you. It was constantly the other. We can't waver in those times. We can't waver when we see the negative, when we see the circumstance that looks contrary to what we're believing for. Faith is believing in what you cannot see. It's the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things that you cannot yet see. That's faith. You have to receive it by faith in the spirit realm, literally receive it as real as if I handed you this Bible and you receive it. It has to be that real. I have to receive this from God while it's still invisible. And we'll talk about the words next week, but that will demonstrate whether you believe or not. So James says, he who doubts is like the wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. Because you can see he's wavering between two things. And so where is it? And then verse 7, such a sobering statement, for let not that man, you could say, let not that person suppose that he or she will receive anything from the Lord. Well, what do we do? You just do what James said. That's part of the problem. We hear factual statements that are meant to lift us up into a higher plane and say, well, that's just lofty high, and we can't live up to that. You're just floating in the clouds and everything. Is God's word His word or not? Is God a liar? Is He a man that He should lie? There's no lie in God. There's no exaggeration in God. When God says something, He means it. And you read that, some people will say, well, what hope is there? What can I do? I guess I'll never receive anything. Well, that just demonstrates that you have no faith. So what's the solution? Romans 10:17. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. How does He do it? By me reading His promise. Reading His promise. Reading. You need healing? Read Matthew 8, where He healed everyone, one after another, where He answered that question of that God's able, but was God willing to heal? And Jesus said, I will. Read and meditate on those healing scriptures until it gets so big inside of you that sickness, that disease cannot stay. I went over 4 years, about 4.5 years believing God. Went through 2 massive surgeries, 7 outpatient surgeries, incredibly huge amount of therapy, had all these electrodes and wires on me and all this stuff going on, taking, 4 different narcotics for the pain, 2 anti-inflammatories, 2 muscle relaxers, just to exist, just to be suffering at massively high levels of pain. 2 braces on my back trying to pull me and hold me together. Looked like the Hunchback of Notre Dame walking around. And I just kept saying, I'm healed. Pastor Ray, how are you? I'm great, and I'm getting better all the time. So you got to just declare the blessing of God overall in your life. How are you doing? Oh, let me tell you. We become Eeyore. You know who Eeyore is? Woe is me. Let me tell you. I'm hurting. It ain't getting better. Go watch Winnie the Pooh if you don't understand the reference. No, they'd say, how you doing? I said, I'm great, and I'm getting better all the time. And I said it with enthusiasm, not, I'm great. And I'm getting better, because our tone, our countenance, our attitude reflects what we really believe in our heart as well. I'm doing great, and I'm getting better. Yeah, well, the next question was always, how's your back? And I would say, it's healed, praise God. What? You mean you don't hurt anymore? I said, I didn't say I don't hurt anymore. It hurts like the dickens. But according to God's Word, I'm healed. And I just believed, and I believed, and I believed, and I went forward through all of that. And the manifestation was just ahead. And I knew it because I already received it. They would say, okay, we're going to have an altar call for healing. And I didn't go up to get healed because I already was healed. Now that was the big one. Whoa, that gave religious people faith. Why aren't you going up there? I'm having a prayer for healing and you aren't healed. I said, oh, yes, I am. I was healed the day I prayed. The day Pastor Mike came and we prayed. And I never prayed, Lord, heal me. I thank God for healing me. Oh, and I thought years, went by and David Businger came in and introduced us to Kenneth Hagin and that man had it. If all of the others would do it, it might have sped up my healing. I wonder sometimes if my well-intentioned fellow saints were slowing it down because they were believing something totally different than what I was believing. But it didn't matter. I wasn't going to depart. I was going to stick with it. And I walked right into the manifestation because it was always there. I know I have this. You can go on disability. You'll be totally provided for. You can sue and have millions of dollars in settlement. It's a no-brainer. You're going to get it. So how can I go on disability when I'm not disabled? That gave the doctors fit, some of the best in the country. We got to get these papers filled out. Had them. We've declared you totally and permanently disabled. We got to get you in. We got to get this going. Get all the money, and then the lawyers, you got to sue, and you're going to get all this money, and you'll and this is the devil. You look at what he did with Jesus, how he tries to twist Scripture. You get on disability, you'll have income for the rest of your life. And you sue when they did what they did, the conditions they did, and then they made you continue to work with that condition and caused it to become a massive injury. And then the doctor they sent you, the surgeon, sliced the nerve in your spine. It was easy. It was a no-brainer. Company, that surgeon that sliced the sciatic nerve and caused massive nerve damage, even more than the ruptured disc that was already massive, because they made me work and it kept pushing the spinal gel out. You'll have money. You can build a church. You can do whatever you want. This is a life of faith. I could have done that, and I don't believe the power of God would have been working in my life. We wouldn't have had to have faith anymore. I mean, unless we blew it or something, but I couldn't do that. We were youth pastors playing, at that time our youth group was really into volleyball, part of it, then they kind of changed into drama, but through those years, I'm like, I can see 60 minutes or 20/20 that I get healed and it'll be real, and it doesn't matter that there's all this documentation, CAT scans, MRIs, myelograms, X-rays, minimal showing, but all these advanced things showing all this damage. And I could show that and say, I'm healed and it's God, and they still would do an expose where they would say, look at this guy living on disability, got all this money, under fraud and deception. He was never hurt as bad as he said he was. And here he is playing volleyball, and he's done that. And how many of you saw those kind of exposés? Because there are people who do that. I would go to therapy and hurt myself trying to get better. I would go in there and push myself and aggressively go after things, while there were guys that were just sitting around in there in this one occupational place. It was so frustrating. I'd go in there and we had to stimulate work because I was believing to go back to work. So they set up and created with wood blocks and things, as if I was taking machine parts as a machinist that I was back then, and picking them up, walking them over, putting them in my machine, clamping the vise, doing the things, acting like I was getting my tooling changed, taking the finished part, putting it over on the pallet to be hauled away, simulating that, and I'm in there, I'm doing that, doing the other things, going through the therapy, and they're sitting around drinking coffee saying stuff like, I'm going to ride this thing out as long as I can. I'm just going to ride this out. No, the life of faith is I believe God. If I believe God, I'm not sick, I'm not hurt, I'm not damaged permanently. And so I couldn't waver. And those were opportunities. I could have joined the bandwagon. I could have said, yeah, I could get disability. I could do that. And, and I'll just kind of believe God, but I can relax with it. And who knows if I'd ever even received the healing. Kind of, declare yourself disabled so you get the money. God says, well, I guess you want to go the way of disability. Let not that man believe he shall receive anything from the Lord. I'd be in a wheelchair. And who cares if you have monthly disability income, millions in the bank? If you're living in crippling pain where you're in torturous agony. I guess Lisa and the kids could have had a great life. But how great would it have been if they saw me suffering? You're like, go on a trip, don't watch me, just go. They'd still be miserable. We got to believe God. Are you getting anything out of this? So did you get to, well, nobody had their thumb in the Bible or their finger. Let's go over to Mark chapter 14, verse 27. And we're going to see Peter, and we're going to rapidly go through this because I want to talk about David. Peter walking on the water is the story. Mark 14, verse 27. Jesus is walking out on the water, and the disciples see him. They're on a boat in stormy waters. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, be of good cheer, it's I, do not afraid. They thought, oh man, is this a ghost? What's going on out there? And Jesus said, be not afraid, because fear will mess with your faith. Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid. Did I say Mark? Really? I got new glasses coming. It's going to help. They discovered what was wrong, Tina. I have vision where it's off and they're putting a prism in there. So that's why I've never been able to see right. And it's always like I'm cross-sighted. So those are on the way. They were like, and moved it in, and it's like, wow, yeah, that's it. So been crazy. So I looked down and and it's like double vision and cross-eyed. I was like going like this all the time. So Matthew chapter 14, verse 27, as if all of you care. Hopefully that prism's not going to show up. I thought about that after I ordered it. Oh, that's good. I'm walking around like, got this like rainbow thing in it. Okay. Okay. I'm not vain, but I just thought that would look weird. Okay, but immediately Jesus said, be of good cheer, it's I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. It is I. He hears the voice of Jesus in the storm, and says, Lord, if that is you, I believe you can. So bid me to come out on the water. And Jesus said, come. Now, folks, this is what I'm saying. Peter had some amazing faith to say that. Because if it was me, I would have said, Lord, if that's you, come on in. We need you in here. I got a tarp and a blanket for you. Come on in. Stay here, we're going to roll over to you. You got to know there's some faith going on. Lord, because there's somebody out there walking on water. Jesus, that's you. It's me. All right, if it is then, have me come out to you. We always give Peter a hard time for where it ends in here, and it really isn't even horrible where it ends. Just human. And he said, Jesus said, capital H, come. Just like I will. God has promises, and when God speaks, you can take it to the bank. You can have faith in it. That's how you have faith. That's how you don't waver. God said it. I believe it. That settles it. I know they made it a bumper sticker. I know people quit saying it because it became a cliche. But it's truth, Janie. God said it. I believe it. And that settles it. I don't care what the devil says. I don't care what demons say. I don't care what doctors say. I don't care what bankers say. I don't care what neighbors say. I don't care what coworkers say. I don't care what relatives say. I don't care what church people say. I don't care what the world says. If God said it, I believe it, and that settles it. Kenneth Copeland one time years ago said somebody talking and sounding all authority with all authority and everything. He says, "You know what? I'm too far gone. I'm too far gone, believing what I believe and it working, that I'm going to change, even though you can sound as good as you want to sound, and have all the degrees and all the titles and everything else, and have everybody backing you up. God said it. I believe it. And that settles it." You get anything out of this? He said, "Come." And what did Peter do? Peter had come down out of the boat and he walked on the water to go to Jesus. I want everybody to say, Peter walked on water. How many of you have heard Jesus walked on the water? Who's ever heard people say, Peter walked on the water? He just needed Jesus to say, come. And he had to believe, we're going to see it, he had to believe, we're not going to get to David and Goliath, and that's okay. He had to believe when he got out of that boat and went over there. We're going to see that in just a moment. Amen. Says, start winding down. He came down out of the boat. He walked on the water. Everybody said again, Peter walked on the water. Say it. Peter walked on the water. It's easy to believe the Son of God walked on the water. He's God in the flesh. He created the water. But the Bible says Peter walked on the water. Teenagers, there's things that the world tries to tell you, you can't do this, you can't achieve that, you'll never get this, you'll never be able to do that. The good times are over. Well, every generation was better off than the other, and they're saying now, there's no hope. People are spending all your money, there'll be no Social Security for you, no this, no that, no the other. When Jesus says come, when He says I will, you can do whatever He said He did, no matter what the circumstance was. And I started to tell you something and said, let me tell you another to boast of your faith. I didn't do it. Jane, why didn't you tell me? Pastor, finish what you were going to say. She's sitting there, because you always do this. Stories of missionaries who received the word of faith, the teaching of what God's promises about provision were, about the tithe and the offering and the blessing attached to those who do their part and seeing God do His part. And they would preach that word. And one missionary story was like, he was praying to God, Lord, I'm just struggling. I see these people hurting. I see these people suffering. I see these people not have things that they need. And God, will you just bless them? There was famine in the land and it was just horrible. It's just, Lord, will you just bless them? And God said to him, they don't have because of you. And he said, what, Lord? What do you mean me? It's my fault. You haven't taught my word. He's like, what? God, what do you mean? You haven't taught them the tithe. You haven't taught them about offerings above the tithe. God, I can't teach them to tithe. They don't have anything. The tithe is 10% of what you do have. Or they have so little, precious little. They can't tithe. They can't. How many of you have heard, I can't afford to tithe? The tithe is the 10%, the first 10% of what you do have. If all you have is $1, you can tithe still. It's a dime. If you have $100, you can tithe still. It's $10. No matter what you have, you can tithe. And God expects you to tithe. Because if you'll do your part, that's faith. That's putting faith into action. God will do His part. Well, the missionary is like, okay, well, God's speaking, what I'm going to do. So he taught them to tithe. Gwendolyn, you know what they did? They didn't have dollars. They'd get a dozen eggs, or 10 eggs, and they'd bring in one egg. And they would tithe one egg. They gave the first fruits of what they had. If they had a little bit of, 10 carrots, they'd give 1 carrot. They had something. You know what happened? That village that received the Word of God regarding financial provision and how that works in the natural realm, all of a sudden started having bumper crops in abundance. And the famine hit hard the whole nation. But they remained, and they were feeding others and blessing others and had abundance. Bumper crops, bountiful things, because God's Word is true. And I've heard these stories time and again where it's like, I can't teach that. I can't do that. You can't not do that. Because God's Word's true. I will come. When He says something, He'll do it. Amen? So Peter walked on the water to go to Jesus. We don't take advantage of the things of God for ourselves. He didn't say, oh, okay, look at me walking on the water, everybody. That's God's man of faith power. Look at me, I'm going to start a mighty ministry. Donate to me, make me rich. He didn't do that. And that's not to condemn, but there are people who've done that stuff. And the Elmer Gantry kind of thing. Of legitimate preachers. You're going to have blessing of God, don't get me wrong. Believe that. We just talked about how God provided for us supernaturally. No, Peter walked on the water to go to Jesus. Jim Caseman said one time, why do we not see people walk on water all the time? Because we don't need to. We have bridges, we have boats and things like that a lot of times. But if there's ever a need, if you're out in a mission field, you have cars to get to the bridge and go across and do your thing, right? He said, but if you're ever out on a mission field and there's somebody over on the other side and they need God, they need to hear a word from God, they need to be healed, they need something, and you don't have any resource, God could give you that ability to walk right on that water. Just like John G. Lake in the midst of a massive plague and thousands of people were dying, talking about plagues. I mean, they were just dropping like flies. They were dying. It was massively contagious. And he goes in there to minister to people. And they're like, we got to give you some injections to try to prevent you or hinder it from contracting it and everything. He says, I don't need that. They're like, oh, you got to. Now everybody knows what COVID molecules look like, right? We've all seen the microorganism and how it looks like a little red, little kind of spongy, spiral ball. And they knew what this plague looked like. And he says, take some of the discharge, the running from the sore wounds and stuff. Take some of the discharge. Has all of that in there. And put it on my arm. And then take that and put it on a slide and put it on a microscope. And they did. And you know what happened? At first, they looked at it, they knew they had some, of the plague microorganism. Looked at the microscope, put that on him, then put it on the slide, looked at it again. They were all dead. See, he believed God's word. He's the Lord that heals me. Sickness will not come near my dwelling. And he was doing it in the name of the Lord to minister to people. And God was able, to do what He said He would do. So this is Peter. He's walking toward Jesus to get to Jesus. Verse 30 gets us back to that thought about, James 1. But, I preached a sermon one time, we need to get the big but out of our life. But, there's a lot of buts, and that's usually no good following a but. I believe God. I believe He said this. I believe He'll do this. I believe He's got the power. I believe God. But, and then everything you say just negated what you just said. That's James 1, the wavering back and forth. But when he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. When he stopped looking at Jesus and looked at the storm, he became afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out. And I know everybody in here, except for some of our newer people that are here, have heard me talk about this over the years, because people read this and they miss it. Number one, everybody say it again, Peter walked on water. And then it said, beginning to sink. Beginning to sink. Folks, you don't begin to sink. I don't know about you, but when I step off the dock onto the water, I sink. I don't begin to sink. Like here's the water, and just for illustrations, don't picture there's a floor. That's still going down, 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 down. But here's the water. Peter begins to sink. He's down some, but he didn't sink. See, when you sink, you don't even see Peter anymore. It's over. It's boom. You sink. But Peter's beginning to sink. He begins to sink. So that shows you that when a little fear, a little doubt, a little wavering, a little unbelief, it can get in and it will start to have an impact on your faith. And when it has an impact on your faith, it will have an impact on the result of your faith, what your faith accomplishes. So he began to sink. Beginning to sink. This is why Peter's still a big hero to me. He cried out saying, Lord, save me. He didn't cry out, Lord, why are you letting this happen to me? You said, come, but you're not doing this. You just let me go out there. No, he just said, Lord, save me. There's your answer. Learn that you don't look at the storm. It will start to cause you to waver. It will start. The storm can be the voices of the doctors, the voices of other people. Look at you. Look at your body. It can be your voice of your body. You don't think when I would say stuff to people, thank God I'm healed. My body was screaming, no, you're not. I had to keep my eyes on the promise. I had to keep my eyes on Jesus. He is the Word. John 1. He's the Word that became flesh. And if I kept my eyes on Him, I knew I'm not going to go. And so Peter just began to sink. To me, that just amazes. It shows you the impact. It shows you the danger. But it shows you it's just not immediately. God doesn't just throw you out. And the answer, when you start to see that, you're experiencing that, is to say, Lord, save me. I believe, Lord, help my unbelief. Get back on those promises, focus, and meditate on them. Get your eyes on Jesus, and you're going to come through. Beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? So there you see it. The doubt is what caused that. He had a little faith, and he was able to. He had some faith and was able to walk on water. He started to see the storm, and he gets nervous and fears, and he begins to sink. And Jesus says, "Little faith." See, your faith wasn't a lot to where it carried you all the way through. You had a little, got you out there. So That's a testimony to life. Every one of us been given a measure of faith. We got to start exercising that faith. We got to work it out. Work that faith muscle out. Exercise it. Build it up. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use it. It can get you out there, but if you don't do anything, Romans 10:17 again, faith comes by hearing and hearing the Word of God. The Greek tense is hearing and hearing and hearing and hearing the Word of God. It's hearing it over and over and over again. And so that's your answer. You got to do that. Otherwise, you can doubt. So a little faith to get you out there. You got to keep that faith going. You got to do something. You got to feed that faith. Exercise that faith. Got it? And so, why did you doubt? You see the open door. Jesus reached out his hands, and because for time's sake we can't get to Goliath and David anyway, the battle. Jesus reached out his hand. I heard a minister say it one time, and I don't know if there's any accuracy or truth to it, but I thought it was interesting. I mean, if he's right there at Jesus, he's not likely to be looking at the storm. He's right there in Jesus' presence. He's arrived, right? So the implication was he was on his way, and he looks at the storm. And he said that, and I don't know if it's in the Greek or something. I never looked it up or anything. But he's like, it said when Jesus stretched out his hand, it was like the elastic man, supernatural. Because the long outstretched hand of the Lord, it's not too short to help you wherever you are. And so he's like, it's stretched out, and he was able to grab hold of it, and Peter comes up out of that water. And then it goes on to say, we don't have time, they walked on the water together back to the boat. So, everybody say it again. Peter walked on water. And then Jesus took his hand. He knew what, and the fear comes in. Lord, save me. And then, I can picture him hand in hand. They walked. Jesus didn't carry Peter. They walked, it says, back. So let's finish how we started. Peter walked on water. And you can walk on water. Metaphorically speaking, you can do the impossible in life if you'll only believe. Let that only believe reverberate in you. I got to end. Only believe. Only believe. When you face the circumstance, you hear the bad report, you see the storm. Only believe. Fight the fight of faith. Only believe. And you'll come through. And that's a high point to end on. Let's close in prayer. Father, thank you. Thank you, Lord, for just challenging us, motivating us, and reminding us of the importance of the battle of faith. In being battle ready, we have to fight the fight of faith. We cannot allow doubt, fear, unbelief in it all. And that we will keep that away by keeping our eyes on you, focusing, reading, meditating on the Word of God, and let it come pouring out of our mouth in Jesus' name. We thank you for it. Amen.